So by 1991, when I was coming up 11 years old, I'd been diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder and depression. Hi, welcome back to Clueless But Trying, where we are rebelling, recovering and raising a merry hell. I'm over being scared, let them talk and let them stare, go tell them that my time is now. I wanted to take you on a little journey back to my childhood years and my teenage years. I feel that what I went through as a youngster has greatly and positively impacted my ability to help my neurodivergent kids, and in that myself as I've got older. I'm told and I've learned along the way that my childhood was not quote unquote normal. I don't think anybody really has a normal childhood, but mine was considerably out there. So by 1991, when I was coming up 11 years old, I'd been diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder and depression. Single parent household, me and my mum against the world, always has been, and I will always be there for her because she's the reason that I got the help I needed and am the person I am today. My mum recognised the signs of OCD in me because she herself has OCD and unfortunately has always struggled with her own mental health. I definitely think I got it hit from all sides of the family, paternal and maternal, grandparents, aunts and uncles. I don't think they'd necessarily go out and get diagnosed. My maternal nan had a particularly awful time with her mental health. And now looking back on what I do know of her and what I've learned along the way, I think she was probably autistic, actually. And it was all just ignored and it resulted in really, really bad mental health for her. So that's why my mum could see that I was doing something slightly different. What she first saw was I was picking off lint off of my bedclothes at night time before I went to sleep. Now, my mum's got OCD. She's also autistic. She's a neat freak, if you like. I say that lovingly. But she's a very clean person, so nothing was dirty. There is no dirt involved here. However, OCD doesn't think about it that way. So I was picking off little bits of lint, hairs, because we had a couple of doggies at the time who weren't allowed on the beds, but obviously the hair gets everywhere. And so I would just meticulously be picking it off and smoothing out the bed covers, making sure it was completely like you do like hospital corners. It had to be really beautifully done like that. I didn't realise it was like a problem, but it was my mum that recognised that actually, hold on a minute, this feels very similar to stuff that she's done before. After this had gone on for a while, my mum obviously decided that I really needed to go and see a doctor. So we went to our local GP, and I do still clearly remember being in that GP surgery. I can still see it now with the orange chairs, so 70s, and the fake plants and the magazines. The doctor called us in to chat. I don't really remember anything, but what I do remember, I'd like to thank this doctor, is that he told me to stop being such a naughty girl. And he did actually use the phrase, "Pull your socks up, Elizabeth." So to a 10-year-old going on 11-year-old, that was really, really useful, really helpful. But that's very much a sign of the times that we were in. Then there wasn't a lot of understanding or empathy. And whilst we live in a time now where there is way more empathy and understanding, now people just can't access the services. So we're better in some ways and not in others. But I digress. After seeing the doctor, I don't particularly remember getting diagnosed with OCD. I remember that I then went to like the Childhood Development Centre and started seeing professionals like psychologists and things like that, because I know it wasn't after seeing that one doctor, but I know my mum pushed and caused merry hell to get me the help that I needed. I also remember that her family just didn't believe me, that I was ill. They too told me that I was a naughty child. They would do this behind my mum's back. If we went up there on a Sunday for a coffee morning after church, because we all had to go up dutifully on a Sunday morning to see Nan and Grandad. And then Nan would pull me to the side and ask me when I was going to stop acting out. Why was I being such a naughty girl? And I was just like my father. Because to them, my father was no good, and therefore I was no good because I was a part of him. My aunt did exactly the same. She pulled me to the side on several occasions and asked me when I was going to pack it in. So, other than my mum, I didn't have anybody. I just had this wonderful woman who was literally fighting against everybody because she could see that her daughter needed help. And even her own family didn't help. My dad wasn't around to help, and I can actually remember him not accepting that I had OCD and things like that, despite the fact that when I did stay with him, I would see him washing his hands repeatedly and then tapping the tap several times, like an OCD ritual. So people have their own reasons, I guess, for reacting the way they did, but it definitely negatively impacted me because I felt that I was the problem. And going forward through the years with having psychology and everything, not being believed by family and being challenged on it all the time, other than by my mum, it had a negative impact on me. Of course it's going to. And people don't realise the depth to which their comments smack hard. And just a little apropos of nothing to jump forward in the future, but when my cousin got diagnosed with OCD, suddenly my auntie was all very, very understanding and could we help her? And by this point I was 18 and a lot of the journey that I'm about to tell you had gone by, and to say that I was disgusted in her approach, it was awful. My cousin was older than me. It was no fault of her own, but my auntie knew what she was doing. And she still to this day has never apologised for that hypocrisy of growing up and telling me that I was the one in the wrong. But then when it was her child, it was a different story. I got diagnosed with OCD and I'd started at the Childhood Development Centre seeing a psychologist. And I remember the psychologist I was given constantly felt like he was asking if I'd been abused. And whilst obviously that is a completely relevant thing to be asking and looking into, I'm thankful that is not something I ever dealt with. Thank goodness. He didn't want to learn about the reasons why I was the way I was or help me figure it out. He just kept digging and digging and digging. And by this point, I'm like 12, 13. I just started secondary school. And, you know, our brains are growing rapidly at the teenage years. And it got to the point that, I mean, I was lucky enough that I could say to my mum, you know, please, can you get this guy away from me? Can I have somebody new? And so that's what my mum did. She arranged for me to see somebody else. And unfortunately, it gave me a real aversion to male psychologists and male nurses and everything, because my OCD then equated male with stuff, be it that, like, not that I thought they were going to do it to me, but they were going to give me that uncomfortable feeling about being asked about all that sort of stuff. So I shut down to all male, you know, staff in that way. My OCD focused on death. I don't know where or why that came from, but I guess it's just one of those massive questions out in the world, isn't it? What do you fear the most? Death. And it would take form in many, many rituals that I would have to do in order to keep myself safe and my mum safe. And then it would move on to like keep my dogs safe, or like my friends safe. Anybody that I cared for and loved my rituals were to keep them safe and from dying. I also had it so that, if I'd seen an aeroplane go over, I'd have to swallow 4 times, be like this. Until I felt I'd done it right, and then that plane was fine and it wasn't going to fall out of the sky and everybody was going to die. I really thought it was like a magical thinking. And as somebody now who's very, very spiritual in my life and in my endeavours, I do have magical thinking, but this type of magical thinking was detrimental to my mental health. I had many different things that I did with my OCD. I did have the germ one. I mean, a lot of people think OCD is about being clean and things like that, but actually I still struggle to this day with like doing the bins because I can't handle the amount of germs on the bin, and I don't want to clean it because I don't want to touch it and get near it. So back when I was younger, I would wash my hands in the like boiling hot water coming from the tap with soap. But then after washing them, I did not dry them because the towel was dirty, obviously. So I'd walk around with wet hands and my hands would crack and they'd bleed. And that became a sign that I'd done my rituals correctly, and so therefore was keeping people and myself alive. Obviously I had the bed thing where I was doing the sheets and the lint, had the washing of the hands. I would pick cutlery, I would look at the cutlery to make sure that it was really, really clean and there was nothing on it, bearing in mind again that it was clean. Of course it was clean, but my brain was telling me otherwise. I would like click pens on and off. Oh, and the other one would be sitting down in a chair. So I would literally be like, sit down in a chair. Nope. Nope. And I'd be terrified that I sat down incorrectly. I cannot explain the incorrectly to you. It is a feeling. It is, like a vibe the OCD gives you. But if I felt that I'd sat down wrong, I would get in and out of that chair or bed hundreds of times. And I'm not even joking. I have, even when I was small, I'm a bigger lady now, but even when I was smaller, I've broken chairs because of getting in and out of them. Because I didn't feel that I was getting it right and safe. And then if I was sitting down wrong, things were going to happen. Cataclysmic events were going to transpire because I did it wrong. It took over every part of my life. I wasn't sleeping at night because who can sleep after you've spent 45 minutes cleaning your bed of all lint, winding yourself up? I'm getting tense now because I can still feel a bit of that old fear that I used to have. And so I'd wind myself up and wind myself up. And obviously during all this time, my mum's with me. She's reassuring me. She's trying to distract me. She's giving me coping skills. She was doing everything she could to help it be eased. But OCD just takes you over. And so I was exhausted mentally, but also completely wired because I had to be on top of keeping people alive. So how on earth was I going to sleep? That, of course, then impacted going to school. If you can't sleep, you can't get up in the morning. And then if you can't sleep, you don't feel mentally at your best to be able to fight the compulsions. Suffice it to say, my OCD was debilitating. And my mum, once again, fought her butt off to get me the help I needed. Talking about the meeting that my mum took me to request more help for me, because by that point I think I'd been put on Prozac, otherwise known as fluoxetine, and it just wasn't doing anything, nor were the weekly sessions with the psychologists. I was just getting worse, quite frankly. My mum knew I needed so much more input than I was getting. I needed more help. I don't really remember much of the meeting, but I do remember my mum crying and basically saying, you've got to help her. You cannot go on like this. I don't know how anything happened from then on, and if anything, I probably disassociated because of the trauma of what I was going through. So then we fast forward to being up at my aunt's house. Now, bearing in mind that my aunt thinks that I'm just being a naughty child still, I can vaguely remember my mum talking to her saying that I was going to be visiting a psychiatric hospital for young people. My aunt still, at this point, didn't believe that I was ill. She thought I was putting it all on and I was a naughty child. So did my nan. Nobody believed me. I was just in their way and causing problems for my mum. I can remember being told that I was going to a hospital, and I can remember running through to my cousin's room and throwing myself on his bed and screaming into the pillow that nobody wanted me. And obviously that wasn't the case with my mum at all, but at that time, because the rest of the family didn't believe me, my dad wasn't involved, I just thought that nobody wanted me around, and the final straw was thinking that my mum wanted to get rid of me. And obviously as a grown-up now, and even by the time I'd got to about 18, I completely understood why she was doing what she did. But at the time it was traumatizing, to say the least. So here we are, aged just 13, nearly 14, and my mum is going to take me to visit the psychiatric hospital. At this point, I just completely believe that the psychiatric hospital is padded cells, straitjackets, strapped to a bed on a gurney, force-fed pills and locked away. So I was terrified, quite frankly, of what I was going to find. Now, this hospital was about 45 minutes drive away from us. I don't remember the drive there. I do remember getting there and seeing this massive house. It was actually an old sanatorium. It was huge. And it was rather impressive, but it was also rather scary. And I can remember briefly being led around. So it was set up as a girl's end and a boy's end for obvious reasons. And each end had its own little kitchen with washing machine, and it had a lounge where we had TV and a hi-fi. And then we also had an on-site mini school. We had a gym area, massive fields out the back. Thinking about it now, it's a really nice setup. It really was. However, when you go to psychiatric hospital, you're about to learn a lot of things about the human race that age 14 you didn't know was possible, even in a horror story. If you have any questions, I'm a complete open book with it, because like I said, I believe that this is why I have been able to relate and help my kids on the level that I've been able to. I believe that's why I'm able to shun the supposed narrative of how things should be, because if there's one thing my life was not normal or average. So I'm here to help other people understand what the other side of the coin can look like for your teenagers, for your young people now, and how it's possible for them to go through insane scenarios and come out the other side and live a damn good life. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you again soon. Take care. Look at this cat. Thanks. Is that your cameo, is it?
Yeah.